The galaxy was quiet, or at least it appeared so from the armored observation deck of the Imperious Rex. Stars stretched infinitely, pinpricks of cold fire that had borne witness to empires rising and falling long before the Varathian Empire had claimed its first world. Admiral Kalen Voreth stood alone, hands clasped behind his back, his tall frame rigid with a confidence that came from years of conquest. Yet, despite the calm that cloaked the void, there was a tension he could not ignore, a subtle vibration that hummed in his bones, whispering that something even in this apparent victory was off. Before him, the Varathian fleet glinted like a river of molten steel. Thousands of warships, each a testament to the Empire's technological supremacy, formed a meticulously orchestrated ballet in the darkness. They had crossed light years of hostile space to crush one planet, one stubborn species. And now, finally, they had succeeded. Earth was subdued. Its fleets shattered, its defenses neutralized, its leaders humiliated into submission. Kalen allowed himself a rare smile, the kind reserved for moments when power is absolute. "Admiral," a voice interrupted, sharp and precise, breaking the reverie of space. Lieutenant Commander Yarek Solon stepped forward, datapad in hand, his expression a mixture of pride and anticipation. "All planetary systems report compliance. No further resistance detected. Earth has surrendered." Kalen nodded slowly, absorbing the words. "And there are no hidden enclaves? No rogue fleets waiting to strike?" Yarek hesitated. "None that we've detected, sir. The humans, they've capitulated entirely." The Admiral's eyes narrowed slightly. "Entirely," he repeated, tasting the word. That small hesitation gnawed at him. Humans were stubborn, unpredictable. They had always been the kind to make desperate, illogical gambits in the face of overwhelming odds. But this time, there had been none. No defiance, no last-ditch strikes. Just silence. Too clean, too neat. Below decks, the Empire's diplomats were preparing for the ceremonial formalities that would mark Earth's submission. Ambassador Lysandra Vex, poised and meticulous, adjusted her ceremonial gloves with deliberate precision. Every gesture was calculated, every step choreographed to project power and inevitability. She had spent her life bending words into weapons, yet even she felt a flicker of unease, a subtle tension that she could not name. There was something about these humans, about this moment, that made the victory feel hollow. Orbiting above Earth, the planet looked serene, almost peaceful. The morning sun glinted off its oceans, painting cities in golden light, revealing no scars of war, no fires, no smoldering ruins. From the observation screens, Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Caldwell watched the incoming fleet, a lump of tension lodged in his chest. Earth had lost, that much was true. But he, like few others, understood the danger in underestimating an opponent who refused to die quietly. His hand hovered over the command console in the subterranean bunker where he directed the last of Earth's operational defenses. Every strike, every defensive maneuver had been calculated, rationed, and yet, now, they were powerless. The Empire believed they had broken the human spirit entirely, yet Ryan could feel an ember of something deeper still glowing beneath the surface. Survival, always survival. The human delegation's arrival aboard the Imperious Rex was marked by careful ceremony. Captain Emily Harper led the way, her navy blue uniform stark against the Empire's gilded regalia. She moved with the calm precision of a soldier, her every step deliberate, her eyes sharp and unyielding. Beside her, Jonathan Mercer, the human diplomat, followed. Tall, unassuming, his gray eyes calm yet penetrating, he radiated an intelligence that made the Empire's finest strategists uneasy. "You understand the terms?" Ambassador Lysandra's voice was smooth, commanding. "Your fleets are dismantled. Your governments are under Empire oversight. Resistance will no longer be tolerated." Emily's lips curved faintly, a small, controlled smile that betrayed nothing. "We understand," she said, her voice level, unshaken, almost eerily serene. Kalen's fingers drummed lightly on the polished table of the ceremonial chamber. He had expected fear, shock, perhaps even anger. What he did not expect was the calm certainty radiating from these humans, the quiet dignity that seemed to defy the crushing weight of their defeat. Then came the whisper. It was not Emily who spoke, but Jonathan Mercer. Leaning ever so slightly toward Lysandra, his voice just loud enough to be heard, he said a single phrase. The only rule that exists. The chamber seemed to shift. Lysandra's perfectly measured composure faltered ever so slightly. What do you mean? She asked, curiosity and irritation tangled in her tone. Mercer's lips barely moved, his voice low and deliberate. Survival is the only rule. Everything else is consequence. Kalen's brow furrowed, a cold unease creeping into his chest. The words were simple, almost innocuous. And yet, they carried a weight, a quiet menace that seemed to seep into the room. He had destroyed their fleets, stripped them of power, forced their leaders into submission, and still, the words echoed in his mind like smoke curling from a dying fire. Emily and her team departed shortly after the formalities, escorted back to their transport vessels. Kalen convinced himself the moment had passed, that victory remained absolute. But he could not ignore the niggling feeling in the pit of his stomach. It was a predator's instinct, ancient and instinctive. The prey thought dead may still strike, and often when you least expect it. As the Varathian fleet prepared to depart Earth's orbit, Kalen found himself returning to the observation deck again and again, staring at the planet below, noting the subtle shifts in its atmosphere, the flicker of lights in urban centers, the seemingly insignificant motions of a species he had deemed conquered. Mercer's whisper haunted him, not just a phrase, but a concept, an idea he could not contain. The only rule that exists. The galaxy had witnessed countless victories, seen empires rise and fall, but this quiet, unassuming exchange felt like the first ripple in a storm that had yet to arrive. Kalen realized, with a chilling certainty, that the humans had not been defeated. They had been underestimated. And in that underestimation lay a threat far greater than fleets or firepower could ever measure. He stood alone in the observation deck, eyes locked on the swirling blue and green orb below. Victory, he thought, had always been a tangible thing, a conquered planet, a subdued fleet, a shattered will. But here, in this silence, in this calm, he felt the first tremors of doubt. The humans were not the prey he had believed them to be. They were survivors, patient, cunning, and most importantly, dangerous in ways the Empire could not yet comprehend. As the stars glittered like cold jewels in the void, Kalen Voreth knew one truth that chilled him more than any enemy weapon ever could: the Empire had not won. Not yet. And perhaps, in the whisper of a human diplomat, they had already lost. The only rule that exists. The words lingered, hanging in the cold void, a shadow that would stretch far beyond this moment. And somewhere, deep inside the machinery of the Empire, the first cracks were forming. Days passed, but the galaxy gave no time for reflection. On Voreth Prime, the capital of the Varathian Empire, banners of victory adorned every spire of the Grand Citadel. The Senate reveled in the triumph of their conquest. Statues of Kalen Voreth loomed over plazas, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper of inevitable power. The Empire's propaganda broadcasted across sectors: Earth had been subdued, and resistance was nothing but a memory. Admiral Kalen sat before the council, recounting the campaign with the precision and pride of a master tactician. The humans had been reduced to ashes, or so it appeared. Every detail was catalogued, every victory amplified. Yet Kalen could not erase the whisper of doubt that lingered in the back of his mind. Mercer's words had burrowed deep, echoing through the endless corridors of his consciousness: the only rule that exists. Down on Earth, the humans moved like ghosts. Ryan Caldwell coordinated operations from the hidden command bunkers beneath the planet's surface. The Empire believed it had eradicated Earth's defenses, but survival had always been the human advantage. Every move was precise, invisible, surgical. Supply convoys disappeared en route. Communications lines scrambled and glitched. Satellite arrays malfunctioned without explanation. These were small blows, almost imperceptible individually, but collectively, they formed a pattern the Empire could not predict, a pulse of resistance that defied conventional logic. Emily Harper oversaw these operations with a calm, calculated demeanor. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the tactical readouts with the precision of a chessmaster moving unseen pieces across a board. Each decision was deliberate, each strike a fraction of a larger strategy. To the Empire, humans were predictable; they assumed defeat meant submission. To the humans, defeat was merely a temporary state, a pause before the inevitable resurgence. The Varathian Senate remained unaware. On Vorith Prime, celebrations continued, diplomats dined in opulent halls, and fleets patrolled the edge of known systems, secure in their dominance. It was a dangerous complacency, one born of arrogance. Kalen felt the tremors of unease growing, subtle at first, then undeniable. Reports of strange anomalies arrived with increasing frequency, convoys disappearing in the void, planets destabilizing without warning, and systems once considered loyal declaring unexpected autonomy. Lysandra Vex requested a private audience with Kalen in his chambers, the quiet halls of the Citadel contrasting sharply with the distant roar of celebration. "Admiral," she said, her tone measured but tense, "these humans, they are more dangerous than we realized. This is not simply a matter of fleets and weaponry. It is strategy, patience, endurance. Every time we think we have them cornered, they vanish, leaving only consequences behind." Kalen's jaw tightened. "They've already lost, Lysandra. Their fleets are gone. Their cities are under our control. Every system bows to the Empire. How can you say they are dangerous?" "They are," she said softly, leaning closer. "Because they do not fight the way we fight. They do not react to power in the way we expect. Survival is their first rule. Everything else, every battle, every loss, is just consequence. They've studied us, anticipated our arrogance, and exploited it." Kalen closed his eyes, frustration knotting his chest. The humans had been crushed, beaten into submission, or so he thought. Yet even now, their influence spread, invisible yet insidious, like a virus coursing through the machinery of his empire. Back on Earth, Mercer's calm hand guided the final stages of human operations. He coordinated teams with precision, communicating in short, cryptic bursts that were executed flawlessly. He was no soldier, but a master of perception, understanding that a small, timely disruption could unravel the Empire's most elaborate plans. He moved unseen, his influence felt in the subtle chaos rippling across Empire systems. Every flaw, every gap in Varathian security, became an opportunity. Then came the first undeniable shock. The Aegis Dominion, flagship of the Empire, vanished without a trace. No distress calls. No debris. Nothing. In the void, it simply ceased to exist, leaving fleets searching frantically for a threat they could not detect. Panic began to ripple through the Senate as reports mounted, entire fleets reporting failures of command, communication blackouts, and inexplicable disappearances of key officials. The humans were not striking directly, they were collapsing the Empire from within. Kalen convened an emergency council, tension crackling through the air like static before a storm. "This is sabotage," he barked, voice echoing across the chamber. "Our systems are impenetrable. No fleet disappears without trace. No planet revolts without provocation. How is this happening?" Lysandra stepped forward, calm yet resolute. "They are following a principle you cannot anticipate, the only rule that exists. They do not fight for victory as you define it. They fight to survive. Every apparent defeat is part of a larger strategy. Every weakness you perceive is a carefully prepared trap. The humans are not merely soldiers, they are ghosts in your machine, shadows that move in ways you cannot predict." The council fell silent. Kalen's mind raced. All the Empire's certainty, all the careful planning, all the victories, they were illusions in the face of a species that did not play by conventional rules. The humans had not been defeated, they had been underestimated. And in that underestimation lay the seeds of catastrophe. Reports of rebellion surged across the Empire. Planets once loyal declared autonomy, entire fleets refused orders, citing mysterious system malfunctions, intelligence networks became unreliable as key communications were disrupted. The galaxy that had celebrated human defeat now found itself unraveling, unable to trace the source of the disruption. Everywhere the Empire looked, there were consequences, silent, invisible, inevitable. Kalen felt a growing dread. Victory had always been measured in tangible terms, ships destroyed, cities occupied, leaders subdued. But the humans had changed the game entirely. Their weapons were patience, calculation, and survival. Their strikes were surgical, precise, and devastating in their subtlety. And always, at the back of his mind, Mercer's whisper returned, the only rule that exists. The Admiral's confidence, once unshakable, began to crack. Lysandra's words, once a distant caution, now felt prophetic. They had assumed the humans' surrender meant the end, that the Empire's dominance was absolute. And in that arrogance, they had left themselves exposed, vulnerable to the quiet vengeance of a species that refused to die quietly. On Earth, Emily Harper watched the final reports of the Empire's fleets vanishing, her calm demeanor masking a quiet satisfaction. Ryan Caldwell coordinated one last wave of operations, precise and untraceable, a culmination of years of planning. Mercer observed from the shadows, his gray eyes steady, knowing that the humans had turned the Empire's arrogance into a weapon against itself. In the halls of Vorith Prime, Kalen stared out at the stars, a knot of fear tightening in his chest. The humans had played by one rule, a rule so simple and unyielding that it had toppled his Empire's illusions of control. Survival. Everything else, power, dominance, fear, was consequence. And now the consequences were spreading like wildfire, reshaping the galaxy in ways he could not contain or predict. The Varathian Empire had believed in absolute victory. But the humans, patient, calculating, and relentless, had shown them that victory is not about what is taken, it is about what endures. Kalen realized the hard truth: they had not defeated humanity. They had only delayed it. And in that delay, the humans had prepared for a reckoning the Empire could not survive. In the quiet darkness of his chambers, Kalen Vorith understood that the Empire's arrogance had been its greatest weapon and its deadliest flaw. And across the void, Mercer whispered once more, even if no one heard it, the only rule that exists. The Imperious Rex hung like a dark sentinel over Vorith Prime, its hull reflecting the glow of the planet below. Inside, the corridors were unusually silent, the usual hum of machinery replaced by a tension that hung thick as fog. Admiral Kalen Vorith stood in the command chamber, staring at the holomap that displayed the galaxy's sprawling empire. Every system once loyal now pulsed with anomalies, communications blackouts, unexplained rebellions, fleets gone silent. His fingers traced the projected grid, trembling slightly as frustration clawed at his chest. Every report, every anomaly, every inexplicable disappearance had one thing in common: humans. And not in the ways he expected. They had not returned in fleets, had not bombarded worlds with plasma fire. They had struck like shadows, silent, deliberate, patient. And always, at the edge of his consciousness, Mercer's words returned, the only rule that exists. Kalen knew it was true now. The Empire had assumed victory, believing that crushing Earth's fleets and subduing its leaders meant the end. But that assumption was the foundation of its undoing. Humans did not fight to conquer, they fought to endure. And survival was a force more potent than the Empire could imagine. The council chamber erupted in chaos as senators demanded answers. Lysandra Vex moved to Kalen's side, her face pale yet composed, her voice steady amid the rising panic. Admiral, the anomalies are simultaneous across sectors we never thought vulnerable. This is not chaos. This is calculation. They are exploiting every weakness in our networks, our fleets, our governance. Every move we make has consequences, unseen, unpredictable, inevitable. Kalen's jaw tightened. Send reinforcements. Lock down all systems. Hunt them down. No human escapes us. Lysandra shook her head. It's not about hunting, Kalen. That is their point. You cannot predict them because they do not play by our rules. They survive first. Everything else follows. Down on Earth, Mercer coordinated the final wave of operations, speaking quietly to Emily Harper and Ryan Caldwell. His voice was calm, unhurried, but each command rippled across the Empire like a knife slicing through armor. Supply convoys vanished mid-journey. Communication arrays broadcast false signals. Entire fleets became stranded in spatial anomalies that seemed to emerge from nowhere. By the time the Empire realized what had occurred, the humans had already moved, leaving devastation in their wake but leaving no trace. Emily watched the final transmissions from Vorith Prime, her expression serene. She understood the scale of their strategy, the beauty of a plan executed perfectly. Years of patience, preparation, and careful observation culminated in this moment. The humans had not been defeated, they had survived, endured, and turned the Empire's arrogance against it. Back on Vorith Prime, Kalen's frustration boiled into desperation. A holomap displayed a galaxy unraveling before him. Senators had disappeared, fleets were scattered, planets were slipping from his control, and all attempts at retaliation were neutralized before they even began. It was not combat, it was collapse. The humans had weaponized inevitability itself. Then came the transmission. Simple, unencrypted, piercing the Empire's calm network like a scalpel. Kalen opened it. Mercer's face appeared on the screen, calm, unflinching, his gray eyes meeting Kalen's across the void of space. "Admiral Vorith," Mercer said, voice steady and controlled. "You believed you had one. You believed the galaxy bowed to your will. But the only rule that exists is survival. Every fleet you destroy, every system you claim, every act of dominance you wield, it is consequence, not victory. And consequences are coming." The transmission ended. No warships. No explosions. No immediate threat. Yet the Empire felt it in every fiber of its being. The humans had struck not with fire, but with patience. Not with armies, but with inevitability. Every system began to fracture, every loyalist faction questioned, every chain of command disrupted. The galaxy had become a minefield, and the Varathian Empire stumbled blindly into it. Kalen sank into his command chair, staring at the stars through the observation deck. He had underestimated the humans, dismissed them as a defeated species, and believed that crushing their fleets meant crushing their spirit. Now, he realized the truth: they had survived because they understood the fundamental rule the Empire had ignored. Survival was absolute. Everything else, fear, power, dominance, was secondary. Lysandra approached quietly, her voice low, almost a whisper. "Kalen, they have already won. Not because of weapons or firepower, but because we could not survive their method. They bend the galaxy not with fleets, but with principle. Survival is the only rule. Everything else follows." Kalen's hands gripped the console, knuckles white. The Empire, once an unstoppable force, now trembled under invisible assaults. Planets declared autonomy, fleets went dark, key officials vanished. The humans had orchestrated it perfectly, and Kalen knew that no conventional response could undo it. Across the galaxy, Mercer and Emily watched as reports poured in. They had become a ghost, striking without trace, dismantling the Empire's certainty with calculated precision. Ryan Caldwell coordinated the final nodes of resistance, ensuring that the Empire's collapse was complete yet clean, swift, surgical, and undeniable. Kalen stood once more, gaze fixed on the void. He understood now that victory had always been an illusion, a construct he had assumed tangible. The humans had taught him the cruelest lesson of all: you cannot dominate those who refuse to be dominated. You cannot predict those who do not play by your rules. And you cannot win against those whose first and only principle is survival. In the heart of the Varathian Empire, the first true cracks appeared. Communications failed, fleets scattered, and power vacuums emerged across the galaxy. The Empire that had believed itself unassailable now faced an enemy that was everywhere and nowhere, a force defined not by firepower but by inevitability. Finally, the human transmission returned one last time. Mercer's calm voice echoed through the void: "They thought they won. They believed their dominance was absolute. But the only rule that exists always wins." Kalen Vorith stared into the darkness, the weight of inevitability pressing down like the gravity of a collapsing star. The humans had survived. The humans had endured. And the Varathian Empire, once the embodiment of unchallenged authority, had been undone not by strength, not by battle, but by a principle so simple it had slipped past every calculation: survival. The galaxy would never forget this lesson. Empires rise and fall, fleets are built and destroyed, wars are fought, but one truth remained: the only rule that exists cannot be broken. Mercer and Emily looked at each other, their faces calm, almost serene. Ryan Caldwell allowed himself a rare smile, knowing that the humans had reshaped the galaxy not through fire or steel, but through patience, understanding, and the unwavering application of the one rule that mattered. And somewhere in the silent expanse of stars, The whisper echoed across space, the only rule that exists. It was not a threat. It was a promise.